as like, what can we do now? What do we want to do now that we have this space and this possibility? And I connected with Lauren Ruffin, who has founded an organization called Crux, which is an organization. It's women-led and minority-focused. It's really about helping Black technologists and Black artists explore performance in virtual reality and augmented reality. And so the whole organization there, we've managed to create this co-op of world builders and designers and developers. And now we're starting to, with the Black Imagination series, bring in the artists into this world, mostly because, as Brandon was talking about, people are ready to see what it is. So the base of this idea was just, let's bring Black artists together and figure out what it means to create theater in virtual reality, because we don't have a rule book yet. When we work in theater, everything basically happens the same way every time, especially in like Broadway theater. The process is always the same. So our question was, what does it mean to introduce people to virtual reality and have them create theater like art? What are the barriers? How far do we want to go? What do we want to explore? Where do we start? So we quickly kind of came around the idea of using AltSpace as our base, because it gave us a lot of tools that we wouldn't have to develop on our own, and it meant we could do this process very quickly. From there, I said, okay, let's find 3 writers. And we found 3 writers from the theater world who did not have any experience in VR. I don't think any of them had been in a headset before. And we were able to send them headsets. One of our writers was in New York. 2 of them were in New York, and 1 was in North Carolina. We sent them headsets, and we did a field trip in AltSpace and said, this is the world. What do you want to create? To some degrees, that was like too open. And I think they were overwhelmed by just the possibilities of what they could do. But they really took advantage of it and created 3 completely different stories. And then we said, okay, now let's keep adding to the team. We have our stories. We need to build our world. So we introduced 2 of the world builders from Crux and had them connect with the writers to start coming up with how we're going to tell these stories in this space. Finally, we needed to have a director and we needed to have actors. So we thought, what performers do we know that would be interested in this? And we asked the writers and we asked SB, and then we kind of put together a group of actors, of 5 actors, who we said, okay, we're going to send you a headset and we're going to do the process over again, onboard you into this, let you explore the world, let you figure out movement and expression and acting in this space. And then we're going to throw together a series of 3 plays in our own little world. And, SB, you can talk a lot about our process of actually rehearsing and performing and kind of how that went.
Mm, definitely. Thank you. So what we did in the onboarding process was to make sure that actors would get accustomed to not only the technical part about being in the headset, but also what it means to be in an avatar body. In theater, we have various mask traditions. And so, looking at the expression versus looking at the expression of the character as how that is separate from your own body. And one of the things that we decided to explore as a team was looking at the avatar as a form of a mask. So what does it mean to come into what does it mean to come into a virtual environment in my day-to-day clothes? What are my day-to-day clothes? How do I shift or transition when I change my hair, change my clothes, change my expression? How do I stay connected with my breath as I'm moving around? Even looking at the limitations of our avatar bodies, how, our torso is very still and our movement is really limited to our hands and our head. And so, what are the different variations? Looking at corporeal mime technique, what are the different variations that you can have to create vast amounts of expression? And then the other thing too is in creating that physical expression, what does in creating that physical expression and also looking at ways to free the voice and have that also be as expressive as the body, what does it mean to then have the audience be able to listen to the story, see the actors engaging, listen to what the characters are going through, and then be able to transpose feelings or emotions onto the avatar bodies. If you'll notice when you look around, everyone has the same facial expression. It's kind of creepy if you think about it. Your avatar is not smiling, it's not frowning. It doesn't have any of the nuances that your face has, all of the different nerves that you can use to create that expression. So, really, it's about what, being able to manifest various movements through the body and being able to create multiple expressions through the voice to then be able to have people project images, feelings, relationships, tension, all of these things on avatar bodies and their relationships to each other in the space. And with that, we worked through each play. We also looked at what it meant on a more logistical level, what it meant to be on book, because
Yeah.
you know what does it mean to be on book in this space. If you have a script in Google Drive does not like alt space all the time. Some days it does and some minutes it does not, and so we had to devise a way to load our scripts to the Black Imagination site in a private area so that the actors could then be able to open a browser and then carry that browser with them or have it automatically follow them, which provided a lot of challenges and laughs. And
And laughs. Yes.
a lot of laughs. Also things like picking up objects and how to work with putting glasses onto the tables, or
Right.
what does it mean to pick up an object and throw it away, knowing that it's going to pop up again and you can use it later. Reminding actors that if there is liquid in a cup, to not drink it too much because in alt space you can throw up, and so unless that is a part of your character expression, you probably don't want to have that show up in the play. So there's just so many different ways, from moving and breath to script work to just blocking, changing your avatar outfits, really transitioning between characters, um, comedic moments in teleporting versus like moving up very closely to another
Right.
character. So, through all of these ways, we were able to put together the performances. But the one thing that, there were nerves about, being able to perform in this space. My Wi-Fi might drop out. How do I make sure that my lines are okay? What if my script, ends up in the other room and it didn't follow me here? And, when we got to the final performances, the work that the actors have put in really showed itself, because the one thing that for theater that just remains true is that it is really complete when you have an audience. And once you have
Right.
an audience, then that's when it really comes together, because you can have that kind of synergy. And the thing that shocked me was the responses that people had during the plays. I didn't realize that, people would, during the performance, use their emojis to just, laugh or cry. We, as sorry, there's people yelling outside. The,
It was pretty rowdy in the show I went to, in a
yeah,
great
so
way.
it yeah, and it even for the actors, like for your character, feel free to use your emojis to, express yourself as you're talking. And so all of these ways that the audience and the characters were able to vibe, it was very nice.
And we had to create it from scratch. I mean, the things that we're talking about in the theater are so simple. You have a script and you hold it here and you read it and you read out your lines, and we really had to struggle with how are we going to be like, you can't look at a script at pages, we can't turn them in this space. But exploring that has been so useful for not only the actors but the writers to understand. In the theater, you can just do a blackout and you change the set, the lights come back on, and we're somewhere else. It doesn't necessarily work that way in VR. So how do you write your script to account for that? And then some of that was just, oh, we have an audience here. How do we tell them where to go? Is that
Mm.
scripted? Is it unscripted? All of these tiny little things that, like SB said, like it's not finished until there's an audience. And for me as a producer, you're always stressed about everything and you're always panicking. And in the theater, the rule is like you have to have a terrible dress rehearsal. If you have a terrible dress rehearsal, the performance will be great. If you don't, then the first performance will be terrible. And like I have to say, just doing it, it felt like there were so many unanswered questions. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
how are we gonna put this together? How is it gonna happen? And then when the time actually came, what we saw was like that was the first time I saw the performers use the emojis, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant! Like, and we didn't script it, and we didn't really think of it because we were so stuck in what does it mean to be like a person on a stage performing, and that completely transformed the performance. So it was kind of magical.
Yeah, and it feels like, it also really depends on platform, right? And we're also
Yeah.
like into kind of what y'all were saying, like it's like almost the easy things that are hard and the hard things that are easy. It's like inverting of what we might be used to being able to do.
Mm.
And that we're all just like trying to figure out together, like, what are these new languages? And like, what you were discovering in alt space, right? I was like spent this fall teaching at NYU around performance in VR, and we were using VR chat, and we were doing kind of those similar types of exercises, and just figuring out like, okay, in VR chat we have legs. I'm pro legs in VR as a dancer, and like we're able to figure out, okay, what kind of weight shifts would help the audience understand what's going on. How can we move through space? What is each avatar? Because in there you get to choose your own avatar, like endlessly. So how does that change, the way your movement is performed? And so I'm curious to think about, like, we have, alt space, your work in VR chat, that you've also done VR chat versus, Paige, you've been in Horizon a lot.
Yeah.
And I did a little testing with those students in Horizon, and there's some interesting stuff in terms of like the expressions that SB was saying around, like, you could actually use your like thumbs up and down to change your facial expression,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. But yeah, there's maybe some deconstructing
What
of
you
different
doing?
platforms discussion to be had.
Well, there's very empathetic avatars in Horizon. You really have like deep emotive feelings when you look at each other's eyes and faces. But, and I'm going to use that sort of as a way, I'm creating sort of a research experiment on loving in Horizon. I'm creating a VR island love dating game show. But in this version, it's way more inclusive, and it's just live streaming for the short period of our live streaming session. People won't really live together for 8 weeks, but the avatars are so intimate that we'll actually um, experience, like, there's a bed area, there's swimming, there's a hot tub, there's all these opportunities for intimacy building. And I want to be able to measure and kind of create a scenario where if we can, in virtual reality, exhibit and perform and create better love relationships, whether they're short or platonic or intimate or romantic, whatever kind of relationship, if they can be more depthful and more meaningful within VR, then we can bring that to the outside world. And I kind of got into doing that in Rec Room. I went on this date, and the date was okay, and but the avatars, like they just have like three eyes, right? They kind of like smile eyes, and then they go into frown eyes and kind of complacent eyes, and they have nothing to do with what you're saying or what you're doing in the moment. They just kind of go automatically. But still, I was able to feel intimacy and connection, right? So
Mm.
maybe even it's not just avatars, but your own willingness to want to connect with
Mm.
others within VR. But with
Yeah.
eye tracking it and all the data that we can gain now with the headsets and the data available within it, we're really able to study ways of creating relationships and making them more sustainable and connecting and more loving.
Yeah. Paige, that's really interesting. And I think even the thought of audience engagement in VR and how do you detect your audience emotion, could be an entirely new panel. But unfortunately, we're at time. And I think I'd just like to maybe close off with one closing thought. And the question would be, in one word, what's your thought on the future of XR and live performance?
In
One
one
word.
word. Wow. I'm going with hope.
Uh, Emerging.
Fireworks.
I'm gonna
After
say
you.
required.
Mm.
And I'm going to say infinite.
Those are all better words. Yeah, good work.
Yeah. Well,
And I
thank
just
you all
wanted
for
to
virtually coming out.
thank you, Elena, and thank you, Bob Klein, and for all of the people who have attended here. This has been a great conversation, and thanks to all you folks on stage.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to
Thank
hang out in the
you.
lobby if anyone wants to chat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you all
likewise.
Yeah,
so much
yeah.
for coming, listening. Appreciate it. And also
Thank
to
you.
whoever is watching on YouTube as well. I thank you as well.
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank
Yeah.
you, you too.
Thank you. I loved learning about your projects and learning more about the exciting performances and performance experiences in VR. Thank you.
Um,
That was really great. Yay, clap, clap, clap.
Yay, thank you. Thank you, Elena.
Yeah, it was great to see you.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you.
awesome. Hey,
Oh, thank you.
Rebecca.
Thanks for coming.
Get better world.
there you are. I'm gonna go pop.
Hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to too.
I'm
I
gonna run through some Paracosmos slides first, and then we'll have
don't know how to jump here.
Hey, better world.
Yeah.
She's trying.
Hi. I was wondering
Hi.
if you would mind being friends because I like what you're talking about, and it's a I have some similar.
All right. Hello, everyone.
I am new to VR, but
I'd
anyway.
love
We're in the
to be
home stretch
friends.
here
I'm
where
so
we have
glad.
2 more
Thank
hours
you.
to go of VR day. This
Thank
is
you.
our, I think,
Yeah.
third or fourth 24 hours in VR. So
Amplify my voice.
we're adding up. We have 70 hours down and 2 to go. I'm the founder and CEO of Paracosma, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing, the types of projects we are doing in VR and AR and 3D, and then invite some of my guests, such as the founder of Asia Unity in Asia, some learning management experts, Accenture, careers, other participants to talk about their perspective on things and where VR is, where AR is, and where we're going with the future. But for now, if you're patient, I'll run through a little bit about our company, about our projects, what we're focused on, and give you context for our perspective on things. So as I said, we're an augmented and virtual reality solutions provider. We do application development for AR and VR, as well as 3D content creation, everything from 360 photos and videos to 3D modeling and digital twins. This is our team. We've been growing since 2016, the beginning of 2016. So now we're almost 4.5 years into this. This was our 2019 team photo. Our 2020 team photo will be more of a Zoom field. But we're up to about 75 people in the US, Japan, and Nepal. We've received a number of accolades over the years and recognition for being a leading AR VR solutions provider, for being a most trusted provider, most innovative provider, and so forth. A lot of magazine coverage for that as well. And we're members of all the leading AR VR associations, including Bob Fine's International VR for Healthcare Association. We're a founding member of that, as well as the VR AR Association, AR for Enterprise Association, and so on, Alliance rather. So we're very well networked in the community. I have helped Bob with this event for the last couple of years, hosting from Tokyo last year, and with our VR for Good conference as well. This was one example of one of our clients, HR and talent management client, where we are now in the third year of an event which comprises both AR and VR applications for leadership training using video holograms. We have over 2 hours of video holograms and an application to be used as part of the information for a business simulation competition among up-and-coming leaders at the company. So it's about 50 leaders competing in 10 teams over 3 days. We're now in the third year of that. But to go through a few of our projects and focus areas, we'll take these one at a time. With augmented reality, we do everything from content creation in terms of creating our own characters, our own AR characters for, in this case, mascots for a company, the rapper G-Eazy, the band Wonderlic, all original creations, as well as frames and so forth for marketing. We do these all usually on the Facebook app, so you don't need a separate app installed. But we also do object-based AR, including furniture preview in the home, as well as this is for a mechanical training application to see how the engine is exploded, how it works with videos and so forth. This was a very important project for us. It's AR for machine maintenance. And this was a demo we did before the project a couple years ago. We're now in the second phase of this project. What this does is overlay 3D models onto machinery in a manufacturing line and gives engineers guidance, Arrow's AR guidance, as well as a checklist of tasks to maintain the machines, to report issues with the machines, to do video teleconferencing to the chief engineer or the safety officer, to record problems and issues, as well as to learn how to do the steps of the project. So very significant work for that manufacturing client. We also, as I said, do 360 photo and videos and photogrammetry. These are some thumbnails of different 360 videos you can find on YouTube on our Paracosma Inc. channel. We've been selling these videos as well for relaxation in the case of the WEND, for travel previews in the case of AARP, very exciting work we've been able to do in that regard, both from filming all the way through post-production. We also have a distribution platform for 360 photos and videos. So this is for a site for Madison Mountaineering. Madison Mountaineering was the first group to film a 360 climb of Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. Also, the first 360 climb of K2, the second tallest, the first 360 climb of the highest mountain in Antarctica, and so on. They have a lot of fabulous 360 photo and video work that they didn't have a way to display to their clients as marketing for their trips, their expeditions. And so we created a platform for them on their website and with a iOS app to access those videos and that content and see what it's like to stand on top of Mount Everest. This platform is also available as a white label service for healthcare, education, other areas as well where you need a curated and access controlled platform. We've also done large-scale photogrammetry. This is Pashpatina Temple in Kathmandu. It's the third holiest Hindu temple in the world. So there's a lot of pilgrims that come to this temple every year. What we've done is recreate part of the temple through photogrammetry and 3D modeling, and that's all available in VR so that you can move around the temple and explore, be guided through a tour of the monuments and so forth. In virtual reality, we have a very broad scope. This was a project we did with the city of Seat Pleasant, Maryland. They have a smart city command center, a software center that controls every aspect of the city, from the street lights to the hospitals to the police, fire, and so on. And we did 2 demo scenarios for them. One was a flood scenario where there's a storm and flooding in the town, and you're in the command center and need to respond to that flooding. Also an active shooter scenario at a school where you're informed of the problem through Twitter and other social feeds, and then you respond with the police and emergency services. This was used for a trade show demo of their software. We've also done a VR surgery simulation for a doctor-client starting a practice for training in VR. This is for a gallbladder removal surgery. So you have to remove the fat, peel off the fat, clip the ducts, cut the ducts, remove the gallbladder. If you know 3D and the fact that 3D models are hollow, is not easy to dissect and cut and work with actual physical objects as if they're tissues. So we had to use a mix of physics as well as animation and other techniques. Now this is Shelter in Place, previously called Unnamed VR. It's our consumer game. It's available on the Oculus Store for Rift as well as HTC Vive and Steam Store. It's a PC-based game. In the house, you're in a big house. There's 16 different rooms. And within that, there's basically 16 different mini games. So every room you go in is a different adventure. There's a maze that reconfigures every time you go in it. There's a 90-foot tower that you can drop off onto gigantic trampolines. There's zip lines and climbing walls in that room. There's a archery shooting gallery, which is an Old West stockade, a shooting gallery, graffiti spray painting, 3D spray painting, music room, and so on, ping pong. The point of this application was, one, just to introduce people to all the variety and fun you can have in VR and to experience that, but also as a AR and VR application developer, almost any human interaction you can have in VR, we recreated in this game. And so if you're doing a training application, you want to spray paint a car, if you're doing something else, likely we've recreated that in this application. And so it was a great learning experience for us and a lot of fun for the users as well. We've done a lot of work with AARP. If you haven't tried it, you should try the Alcove app by AARP. It's a social application for, parents, grandparents, kids, anyone really, where you meet in a house, and in that space you can control the space to add your own 360 photos and videos, your family photos. There's games where you can play checkers and chess with your family members and friends. Adapt the environment in different ways. we've created 60 now brain games, brain training games, which are part of the AARP Staying Sharp series to help improve your brain fitness and overall fitness. And there's, as I said, 60 games. Now, right now, I think there's about 10 published. Hopefully by Thanksgiving, you'll see another 20 or so, and then by Christmas, all 60. But it's a great application. We've been working with them for well over a year now. We also did an AR application, an AR version of Alcove that we demoed at CES with them. And we've, as I said before, sold 360 videos to them as well for their application. We really see AR and VR as the tip of the iceberg of a very broad transformation that's happening in technology from 2D to 3D. And, you know, we originally formed as a VR company 4.5 years ago, but what we quickly learned was that this transformation is taking place across industries, across technologies, everything from self-driving cars to 3D printing to deepfake videos. Now today there was a recreation of the bomb blast in Beirut, a forensic 3D scenario where they used photogrammetry to recreate the exact conditions of that blast. This is a case where we do photograph replacement through VR. So if you were a retailer and you wanted to sell a sofa, one possibility is you allow someone to use AR to put that sofa in your living room. Another is if they go to the website, you'll sell more sofas if it's shown inside a living room with plants and other tables and chairs and pictures and so forth. Traditionally, you would have to ship all those furnishings to the warehouse, stage them, light them, photograph them professionally, and then Photoshop them and then put them on your website. What some companies are doing now is they're rendering all those objects in 3 dimensions in 3D as photorealistic models, usually too high a polygon count and resolutions to use for things like AR, but they can arrange those scenes and create that living room and then render the images and put those on their websites without touching the physical goods, saving potentially millions of dollars of cost in photography and processing. And so that's a very big practice of ours. One of our largest clients is for photography replacement. We're also scaling up these processes, so rather than just making a table or some chairs in VR or a camera lens, we can create entire cities or refineries or warehouses and so forth. These are some of the digital twins we've done. In the lower right case, a winery where this is for a company called Ursa Leo, which is an Internet of Things company. They display the Internet of Things sensor data from the facility on a 3D model that's generated and manipulated in a Unity game engine. So it will take you to the problem. It will show you the temperature, the humidity, the breakdown, other features of the devices. It really will allow you to utilize that data much more realistically and effectively. We're also doing this for more virtual tours and so forth. This is a project where we're haven't completed yet, but we're under process for a university to recreate their university campus all through 3D models where you can these are fully landscape, full 3D models where you can fly around, walk up to the buildings as if you're there. And in this time of COVID, that type of realism for large-scale campuses and environment is becoming quite significant. We've also, through the time of COVID, moved a lot of our activities into AltSpace here. We have a virtual Paracosma office in AltSpace where we have meeting rooms, conference rooms, an auditorium where we have company-wide meetings and discuss our work as well. We've recreated these worlds for different companies and branded them with their logos, their information, and so on. And we just 2 weeks ago completed the Tokushima Movie Festival in Japan. This was a 3-day event with 8 different events over those 3 days in 3 different worlds here in AltSpace. So we had the Yurizi Theater at the top, which is a lifelike model of a 1929 building in the festival town. That was the venue for the live streaming of the movies for the film festival. The Ingawa Office Auditorium on the lower left was a more modern Japanese auditorium where we had all the seminars and seminar speakers, the award ceremonies and so forth streaming to there. And then we had an outdoor environment where they were streaming esports competition as well. And that included the two other buildings as well as some in aspects of the town. And so this is, as I said, becoming increasingly important. We're working with other collaboration platforms, including our own multi-user VR applications. But what we find really compelling about AltSpace here is not only the price that it's free, but also that you can access it through PCs, through Macintosh, through other devices, and it's not purely limited to VR headsets. And this really is the mission statement to kind of summarize where we are at Paracosma is, you know, we believe that making augmented and virtual reality as good as reality is not enough. That's the first step. We want photorealism. We want photography replacement. We want to pass the Turing test where you can't tell the difference between our VR experience and real life. Or if you're doing AR, you can't tell what's an AR object and what's real life. You know, that's the ultimate goal. But beyond that, our vision is also to make augmented and virtual reality better than reality. And this is the case where you're flying through space, you're walking through a volcano. In training, you can create fires, explosions, very dangerous situations in VR that you cannot safely replicate in real life. In VR surgery training, you can't operate on someone for practice. It's just not ethical. So creating that in VR is really a phenomenal opportunity. And our mission is really to use these techniques in AR and VR to make the real world better. So as I said, we co-founded VR for Good conference with Bob 4 years ago. We're promoting social VR, empathetic VR, VR for healthcare, education, and so forth. All the great aspects and ways that VR helps people. Things like tsunami awareness is another project that we hope to complete soon. And it's really where we're going. So that's an overview of Paracosma. We do some other things as well. I'll just skip through here to bring up my guests, but this is a communications application. If you think of AltSpace VR, but from your iPhone, where you're creating live video avatars in 3D as a point cloud from the TrueDepth camera, and then transmitting those into a web VR world that you can view in a browser. That's what we created and demoed with IVN, and hopefully it will move on to completion as a commercial project soon. We also have a team in the ANA Avatar X Prize competition, which is to create virtual telepresence where a user can interact in a place, in an environment remotely as if they were there through techniques like VR and headsets and sensors and so forth, but also for the end user to perceive as if there's a real person on the other side of that robot or inside of that robot, so that you have a two-way experience of presence. That's just in the middle phase now, and we should have some, we're one of 77 initial qualifying teams, and we have the next semifinals coming up shortly. Through that process and in general, we also expect to announce soon an agreement with Haptex, the VR glove company. They make the world's best haptic gloves, where there's not just sensory feedback where you feel like you're touching feathers and butterflies and so forth, but you also have force feedback. So if you pick up an object, you can actually, it restrains your fingers from squeezing around that object. You actually feel the object. So for medical applications, for robotic applications, for manufacturing, this is a really great tool. And what we're doing is systems integration and software APIs to connect people's VR and manufacturing experiences to the haptic gloves. As I said, I'm Ken Ehrhart. Please befriend me if you want to talk more or do more. I have some guests here today. We can all either aggregate on the stage or we can communicate through the audience. They each have interesting stories throughout their careers, as well as how they've worked with Paracosma over time. Shital is our lead VR developer at Paracosma. He runs our game engine work, whether it's AI and machine learning or VR applications or alt space worlds. James was 27 years, 28 years with Accenture, managing a lot of their enterprise client work and managing 18,000 developers around the world. So great wealth of enterprise experience. Jim Lorenz is joining Paracosma in a sales capacity. His experience is really phenomenal in learning management systems, e-learning, training applications. He's been working with AR training applications as well as VR. John Goodall is a really interesting career beginning in Asia with over 8 years working in Japan, speaks Japanese fluently, has notably worked for Sega, has set up Unity Asia, has worked for Labster and other global gaming companies. So a wealth of experience in video games and VR. And Shin is a marketing whiz. He's helping us in Japan. He's the marketing head for a company called Ubique, which is a marketing agency and service provider in Japan. And we're working with them on some applications and alternatives that we think will be really great for AR and VR in Japan. Both Shin and Ogura-san, our CTO, helped spearhead the Tokushima Movie Festival and what we did there. So that's the extent of my remarks for now, but we're here, and the purpose of VR Day is to experience and discuss and promote an advanced VR. So there's been speakers throughout the day talking about applications and projects they've done. But originally, this was in-person events to get people to put on a headset, experience VR, and maybe go out and buy one of those headsets. Now we're at the point where people are experiencing the social, the collaborative, and the other aspects of VR and how that can benefit them. But would love to just open up the discussion, and if we can either have some discussion amongst ourselves, and I can ask, for example, John to tell us a little bit about Unity Asia, or as there's questions in the audience, if people have questions for this elite group, experienced group, happy to field those as well. But why don't we start? Let's see. James, I think you had some limited time available. Do you want to say a little bit first and talk a little bit about where you see Paracosma going and the future of VR and AR as well? On the lower right. Okay, there we go. Great. Okay. Great, thanks, Jim. I was just trying to go into the settings to upgrade some of our speakers to host so that you can hear them better. Um, let's start with someone with a loud voice now. You want to start, John, and we'll try and get your microphone up as well.
Now, how was that? Hear me better?
That's much better.
Oh, great. Thank you. So yeah, my story is actually kind of boring compared to a Mars simulation. I've never done anything like that. But I have been in the video game industry for 25 years. Super exciting career. I've been involved with VR from very early on. Some of you folks may have heard that Sega, back in its hardware heydays, was planning on launching a VR device. And they actually canceled that project in 1994. I joined Sega the year after that in 1995, and I played with some of those headsets, and I had the very nice pleasure of puking from those headsets. Imagine a refresh rate of just 15 hertz, whereas in today's headsets, we've got refresh rates up to 6 times that. And you can imagine um, some of the some of the effects that that might have had, including a bit of nausea, a bit of headache, good times, and Sega ultimately decided to pull out of that space just because the technology wasn't quite there yet, and they were concerned about how it might make some of the consumers feel, and quite frankly, how Sega might have had some liability concerns for that. Let's see. Host is calling on me to make me louder. I think I'm as loud as I can be, but hope you'll hear me okay.
John, I added everyone as a host. So look at your lower right. Do you see a button that says host tools?
I do not.
Okay. How about you, Shital? Do you see that? Or you? Yeah, we might. Yeah, you might have to re-enter the room to see it.
Oh, I'll give that a try.
Yep. So this is the wonders of AltSpace. They if you've ever hosted an event in AltSpace, they have multiple categories of users. So they have hosts, they have moderators, they have presenters, they have yeah, I think there's 5 or 6 different categories, and they don't tell you how those nest or interoperate. So you would think a host would be able to present, not necessarily so, or a presenter would be able to host, not necessarily so. And so in this event of 24 hours long, we have dozens and dozens of presenters, of hosts, of speakers, and we've gone through in the event world, and we scroll through page after page of permissions to try and get these buttons to appear for everyone. And it's not always easy, but hopefully maybe we've hit the limit of hosts that AltSpace can have, but we'll try this and see if we get anything better. Otherwise, we'll shout and yell and see what we can do.
Ken, do you hear me any better now?
Yes. Did you find
Hopefully
the
the
host
audience.
tools?
I did. Yes. Yep.
And
I do have those
amplify
now.
voice. Perfect. Perfect. Yep. So we're learning as we go. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Yeah. No, I was just recounting some of my experience in my career. I joined Sega a year after they canceled their VR project in 1994. Imagine refresh rates in your VR devices 1/6 of what they are today, and imagine how that could have made you feel. In fact, I went on to work for Sega for 7 years. Probably my biggest claim to fame in the games industry, 25-year experience there, was that I launched Unity Technologies in Asia. I was about employee number 60, their first asset in Asia. As Ken introduced me, I've lived and worked in Japan for about 8 years. 日本語はできますが、残念ながら英語の、強い子はそんなに強くないんですけど、so I speak Japanese, but unfortunately don't speak English very well. But super exciting times. Unity was one of the very first game engines to support the Oculus SDK. I had some nice experiences in 1995, 1996, puking while using Sega's canceled VR headsets. But also early on, I was witness at trade shows all over the world, watching consumers puked up as refresh rates and lag cycles. Lag was, for example, 300 milliseconds. So you'd be playing a game, you'd turn your head, and it would take a third of a second for your field of view to catch up with what you were doing. And there were many a puke basket, not garbage basket, but puke basket set next to some of those kiosks in trade shows. So some very exciting times there. Further on in my career, I did work in the edutech space and worked for Copenhagen-based Labster, which makes clinical diagnostic laboratory simulations. So physics labs, biology labs, engineering labs, chemistry labs. You can do simulations in there in VR, which was very exciting. So I've seen a lot in my career, done a lot. I'm super excited about VR, always have been. I believe, my personal opinion is that VR is very far from where it's going to be. But I have a further interesting take on VR. So I believe that VR and the growth of VR is going to follow the PC model, not the smartphone model. And what I mean by that is, for the first 5 million units of PCs in homes, that took more than 10 years to accomplish. But smartphones to exceed 5 million units took only about a year. And so the reason was that smartphones were very consumer driven. And so there were consumer applications that were on smartphones, and consumers felt they had to have smartphones. Whereas people got used to PCs in the workspace. And so once somebody had a PC in their workspace, they realized, ooh, this would be kind of cool to have at home. And so very much PC adoption was driven by the workspace. And I believe that VR is going to follow that same model. And so as people experience VR in enterprise applications, they're going to think, ooh, this would be cool to have at home. And so as the cost of VR development comes down, as consumers start to bring VR in, having learned it in the workspace, VR can eventually become what it is meant to be. Now, I'd like to say I've got a crystal ball and say when that will be, but I still think it's still 5 to 10 years out from where it could reach its true potential. So that's the gospel according to John. That's kind of what I think of the whole VR situation, but something I'm super passionate about, and would be happy to field any questions from any of you. But let's let some of the others speak now too, Ken.
Super. Thanks so much, John. Who do we have nearby that wants to pop up here? Jim, you want to come up? Jim Lorenz?
I'm working my way over here, Ken. I'm having trouble jumping the broom.
Yeah, giving you host and presenter capabilities probably blocked you from the stage, but
Yeah, I was on before, but when you
yeah, if you'll need to teleport, I think, but you can try some more. Do you have host tools in your bottom right? There we go.
Good to see you around here. Yeah, thank you. I'm here. I'm coming.
Virtual chuckles.
Well, I appreciate joining everyone here today. You know, I've not been a gamer. I've never had a headset on before a couple of years ago. My history as far as the inner
Hey, Jim, do you have a host button on the lower right where you can amplify your voice?
I have nothing on my lower right.
Okay. Let me. No, but proximity to the audience will help. And
Your host has called on you. Is that a little bit better? Much better. Let me do one more thing here. How about now? Is that better for everybody? Oh, well, geez. One second here. Getting better? How about now? I'll give you one more shot here. That's what I'll do. I'll see you in a minute. I can step over here. Oh, probably now I can hear you. Go ahead, Shin. I'm gonna speak. I don't.
Kenny, we lost your voice. It's very, very mute. But I heard you calling Shin up and maybe Shital, so.
All right. How about now? Is that any better? All right. I don't know if Shin's still in the auditorium. Shital, do you want to talk a little bit, introduce yourself about how you started making games and Facebook games and got into VR?
Yeah, is my voice loud enough?
Yep.
Can you hear me, guys?
Oops, he's gone.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have your host tools as well? Or did they appear?
Yeah, I do have my voice tools and I have
Okay.
just amplifier voice.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me. So, I'm still Maharjan, working as a game developer at Cosmo right now. My story, I started at 2012. Actually, I started while I was playing games. Me and my friends, we used to play a lot and a lot of games. We used to be in my house all day and we used to play some kind of Facebook multiplayer games. And while we started playing games, we played and played a lot, and we got so we played it so much that we used to like talk to each other like in this game this is not right, this is not right, and they should have done like this, they should have done like this. That's how the game development came in our mind. So once while we were playing, then we thought this is a mistake, they are doing this should be done like this but not like that. So that's how we started making games. One day he said, let's make a game just like this and make it much better. So one night we started researching for gaming, and that's how we got into Unity. Me and my friend. We had no idea about programming or anything. We I dropped out college in 2013 and I started learning Unity and game development myself. First I started with uh, just mobile games, Android games, and I started learning making games. Then while we were making games, then we found out that the game development was not so easy as we thought.
and then we started making games, and we were just making small mobile games. Three, three, four. Then we went to fourth, fifth. Then we started. As we were developing games, we learned many things. We're teaching ourselves how to make games, and then came to 2015, where how we got into VR. We were really excited for VR. It was really new technology, and we we are we live in Nepal, Kathmandu, but so that we don't have much access to the new devices that are in the world. So in 2015, we got interested in VR. So I started downloading the templates given by Google, and I made a Google VR myself. Talking to my engineers friends, I asked them to get the lens and everything, and I assembled it, and I got into VR. That's how uh, I got into VR, and I started making a game called Unnamed, which is sheltered in place right now. That just can show you guys. And then in 2016, I met Ken here while he was here in Nepal, and Jim was there as well. We had a common friend who invited us and introduced us. So we talked, and he invited us to join Paracosma, where he I got we got access to a lot and a lot of new devices and new technologies, and that's how we came here. And we did a lot of projects in here regarding VR and AR, and we have a lot of things. So I think VR is at the very beginning of its phase. I think it is going to develop and more, and we will be seeing a lot and a lot of good quality games and all the experiences in VR. I think uh, VR is going to be like very helpful in the future. For now, we are just using it as a game and a little bit of training, but in future, I think it will be more and more of training, because it is the game engines and the PC are getting like very powerful, and much realistic 3D models could be generated and could be loaded in VR. The PC, the PC are very good at it. Not so good, but very good compared to the past right now for the realism. But I think mobile VR will, like Oculus Quest, they would be more, um, they would be upgraded, and they would be good too. I I think they would be the more value to consumer, because people, they have, for a PC VR they need to get the PC and VR and all the stuff they need to get set up. But for Quest or mobile VR, it's I think it's very handy for people to take it anywhere and use it. So that's why I think mobile VR is going to be the future of VR. So that's how I joined. That's my story. Any questions?
Well, let's introduce Shin as well, and then we can access questions for everyone. Shin, you want to introduce yourself a little?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm Shin Sakaue, Japanese. Actually, I'm a
You can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't hear Shin as well.
Yeah, I'm here as well, but I don't hear Shin.
Okay. There, he's back.
Yes. So
You
can
want
you
to
hear
start
me?
over, Shin? And we missed.
Yeah. Can you hear
No,
me?
I don't hear him either.
Move on. Yeah, we're good. Okay, why don't we pause there, and when we can hear Shin again, he can interrupt us, and we'll hear more about his background. The shorter version or the impersonal version is Shin has been working his career in Japan doing marketing and business development, mostly for international software companies in Japan, everyone from eBay to Skype to Nuance. And most recently, he was hired as a director of marketing for a company called Ubique, which is a leading marketing and advertisement branding company in Japan that works with a lot of the leading enterprise companies in Japan. And so they're looking at ways that they can introduce AR and VR services to their clients as well. So it's part of what we're doing in Japan at the moment.
Well, can you guys hear me now that I'm back in here?
Yes, Jim.
Better even? I got
Yep.
the tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just say a few words here. My thank you. Good. I am the virtual version of Jim Lawrence, and I've got about 11 years now, I guess, in the learning and training business, and maybe about half that have been associated with what I'll call immersive learning, immersive technology. When I jumped in, I was actually, my story was that I got involved with my web developer who had just started getting involved with corporate learning. So back at the dawn of the internet, so to speak, late 90s. And at that time, they were one of the first companies to create a learning management system. It was the late 90s. And trying to make a long story a little bit shorter, I got involved with them when I was in between careers, and they were a learning management system, and they were creating custom content. And really, the reason they got into custom content, e-learning content, was that no one knew what to do with their learning management system that early on. They had it, and they understood the concept of how great it would be to be able to build some e-learning courses, which were at the time not a lot more than PowerPoints. But I got involved with these guys who were looking for a little leadership at the time, and it was really my first exposure to learning and training. And e-learning at that time was the biggest technology that was out there. And frankly, over the past 10 years, until augmented and virtual reality and 360 video came around, um, there wasn't much change. There wasn't much addition being added besides the authoring tools for e-learning courses, gamification. Every time something new would come along, it would be something small like that was added to e-learning, um, and then came AR and VR. And like a lot of things in my life, when I found from a technology standpoint, I gravitated to it right away. Um, and and the word immersive, I'll go back to the word immersive, and that is just what kept coming out in the training world. And I'll put a little box around the training world, in my training world at least, that involved typically Fortune 2000 companies. These guys that had learning and development teams already, and they had budgets as well as um, field service for repair. All typically those same types of companies. But so they're looking. They have budgets and they were looking for the newest and latest and greatest, and they were willing to roll the dice a little bit on some of these early on. And we did ironically, one of the first things we did was, I say ironically, now it makes more sense, but it was more on soft skills, even though in this world something that's tangible, especially on the AR side, seems to make a lot more sense to get in there. But we have been involved in projects, for example, where you are face to face to somebody in a 360 video, not an avatar, but somebody that we have been recorded a number of times to give every possible response in a 360 video, and then turned around later as the learner and you put a headset on. I'll give you an example. We're at a conference room table with 4 or 5 people, and the lesson was really to expose yourself to learning about social skills. DISC, for example, who's the driver of the group, who's more inquisitive, and so the the session itself, if you're the learner, you're sitting at the end of a table and you have 4 people that have been previously recorded, and of course it feels like you're with them. And this is the great thing. When up to this point in time, any example similar to this would have been done with just video, and the director of the video would have been deciding where to point the camera, how long to spend it there. They're going to make those decisions for you. But now that you're in 360 and you got this headset on, even though the person next over to my right might be talking at that time, I have the ability to look to my left or my right and scan the whole room. And so me as the learner, now I'm deciding. I'm making the decisions on what's going on in the bigger context of the whole thing. So a 360 video all of a sudden became very emotional. And of course, this thing has gone on and on. Certainly beyond 360 video and items that are more tangible when it comes to how to a product that we need to learn about, product that we need to be able to sell or to be able to show or practice on. I'll wrap up this first little section here by saying that I'll tell you a little story. I was in how powerful the emotions can be, and I think I shared this with you, Ken. Is that one of my first times I was actually in a headset, and it was in a alt space room, and I was just popped myself in, and without realizing it, I was right in the middle of a stage of a very full room of a church service that was going on. I had no idea that I was basically sitting on top who was talking at the time, and as I finally turned around, it was total embarrassment. And I think about that now is because we're in a digital world, right? And we're avatars right here, but I think that's really the point of when it comes to learning and training, and at least on the soft skill side, is the ability to have some emotion, even in a safe environment that you can practice, whether it's role playing or learning social skills. So that's a little bit about my background, and I'm happy to go a lot deeper. I'm excited and passionate about this. I think that as much as an e-learning course changed the world of training in 90 or 2000 ish, over here, we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg right here of where this is going to take us. And I'll happy to share some stories and examples of other projects we've worked on the virtual reality, augmented reality, 360 video side of it. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. That was really great. Shin, do you think your audio is working, or do you want to try again, or skip it for now? Okay, thank you. So do we have any questions at the moment from the audience? I might play some videos as well, but let's have a little discussion if you like while we have these experienced folks on the stage. a question for John. So, John, when you first went to Asia with Unity, when was that? That was back in 2010 or something.
2010, that's correct.
So at that time, um, I don't think Oculus had even done its Kickstarter yet. Maybe VR
Nope, not
wasn't
yet.
really around till, certainly till much later. The Oculus acquisition was huge. But what did Unity have a vision for VR at that time, or was it more opportunistic coming along later?
So certainly, Unity was founded initially as a games studio. And was absolutely full of gamers very interested in the space. Um, and so they had certainly been watching it, but really had waited for the technology to become a bit more possible. And so certainly when the Oculus SDK came out, um, I myself, having known Paul Molecki quite well and kind of knew what he was working on, um, when it first came out, we were super excited about it, and we pulled out all the stops to make sure we supported it as strongly as we could.
And obviously the result of that is 80 or so percent of VR experiences have been made on the Unity game engine. It
Still
seems
today,
to
even,
me,
yes.
yeah, it seems to me that it's really a two-horse race between Unreal Engine and Unity. How do you see the main differences between the two? Do you see a third player coming along at some point?
So it's interesting. Prior to Unity, I had worked for Crytek, which makes the CryEngine. Certainly, the CryEngine powers also some very cool VR content. Um, but even before that, I had done some consulting work for Epic Games and the Unreal Engine. Early on, I worked with a game engine called Gamebryo. And so very familiar with game development tools from the early 2000s, even with the Quake engine and a lot of other technologies. But having worked in that game engine space, I have always said, and still say today, that the biggest competitor to game engines is internal tech. And so these studios that build their own technology. Um, and so really, if you were to list all the major players within that space today, certainly Unreal has the dominant market share. Everybody from indies to very large studios use it. Um, Unreal is certainly very close behind that in terms of market share. And you can do some very powerful things in both of those engines. I would pit even the CryEngine in that space. Some very good games created with that. And then the fourth major player in that place would be internal tech. So tech that some of the studios are developing on their own. Certainly EA has their Frostbite engine, which is an internal technology. A lot of internal tech really is that biggest competitor.
Super. And
yeah, and I will say, by the way, that in 2000, I think it was 13, I lost one of my best employees at Unity Technologies Korea because Oculus poached him from us, and I was very sad with that. He did very well when Oculus was acquired by Facebook. He would have done very well in Unity's IPO back in September of this year. Uh, but at the time, it was very sad to lose one of my best Unity employees to Oculus. So fun times in this industry.
And John, are the rumors true? Did Facebook consider buying Unity? Was that a possibility that was on the table?
Even today, I don't think I can really comment on that. It is safe to say that there have been dozens of companies interested in acquiring Unity technologies on its way to where it is today.
Super. And how do you, obviously we now have a little bit of a battle going between walled gardens and open platforms. And
Uh,
Yeah.
Unreal Engine, prior to creating their own game store, was very much a proponent of open systems and platforms, and now they seem to be competing a little bit. They certainly have their battle with Apple going as well. But do you see Oculus facing a challenge because they're embracing Facebook sign-on and some of the restrictions that come with that, trying to very highly curate their games on the Quest and so on?
Yeah, so here's where I've got a little bit of bias as well. I'm not ashamed to admit that. Um, but having done business in Asia for now 30 plus years, um, I absolutely love China and the potential of business in China. And there is so much innovative work going on, not just from a hardware perspective, but also from a software development perspective, from a content perspective. By tying itself so closely with Facebook, they're locked out of China. And so I think they will have some challenges with that. But it's a mixed bag. And I realize it's a mixed bag because even though they're losing out on China, they are making the user experience more friendly in Western markets. So we'll see which has the more dominant influence. But yeah, I think they're creating some challenges for themselves, but also some interesting opportunities for themselves. We'll see where it falls out.
And of course, the flip side of that is that the HTC, Focus and Focus Plus, some of their headsets have had, obviously far greater traction in China. The Pico headset and so forth,
Sure.
is really limited exposure here in the West, but it is quite strong there. Do you see just a parallel development of these kind of two VR worlds, or how do you see them coming together? Will it be
Yeah, I do.
the
In fact,
global hit game?
yeah. So it's interesting. In fact, earlier this year, I was in China when the whole coronavirus thing hit. But earlier this year, I met with Pico in Beijing, January this year, and saw some very, very innovative stuff that they're working on. And, Pico within mainland China has number one market share. But in the West, we don't even know about them. They have a fairly good presence in Korea and a growing presence in Japan. But Pico, even though they're the market dominant player in mainland China, they're one of a dozen major hardware players in that space in China. Um, and that creates some challenges. So, for example, when I first entered the computer world back in the late 1980s, there were some 5 different operating systems um, in Japan for personal computers. You had DOS V, you had the PC 9801 series from NEC, which had its own different OS. All these fragmented OSs made it very difficult for software developers to succeed because they had to develop for multiple platforms. Um, and that's one of the reasons why PC software development in Japan didn't take off nearly as quickly as, say, console game development. Uh, and so, because there are so many different players and so many different regional players, that presents a real challenge to VR developers. And I would love to see some of the standards bodies that exist for our industry working in a bit more close cooperation to develop standardized tools that will make it better for all developers. And like I said earlier, I believe we're still at least 5 years out from where VR can become, but some standardizations are going to help that. And I really hope that that happens.
Super. Excellent. Any audience questions at this point, or we'll keep going a little bit? I certainly have a question for Jim around learning management system and the whole training and education space. I'm a director of a HR and talent management company in Japan. I've been to HR Tech for the last 10 years or more. When I've gone to HR Tech, I think this last year prior to the COVID, there was one headset in the entire Las Vegas Convention Center where it was held. And there was very limited exposure of VR. And the year before, there were two headsets, but one of those was just a marketing gimmick to get you to come into the booth. It had nothing to do with training content. In the meantime, if you go to VR shows and the Industrial AR, VR Expo and so on, there's a lot of questions. A lot of VR companies that have started learning platforms for safety training, for enterprise training, things like this, and that's a very fragmented area as well. There seems to be no mesh right now between the traditional enterprise learning management and talent management companies and the VR groups that are trying to do sort of more IT focus and training focus solutions. How do you see this evolving? Is it just the immaturity of the industry, or what needs to be done?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to step up here a little bit, everyone can still hear me okay? Good.
Yeah.
I think it's the wild, wild west right now, as far as that goes. It's a question you get. You're calling on and talking about trying to find solutions around AR and VR in these companies, and the first question always comes up is, how does this work with my learning management system? Is it already integrated? No one knows the answer. Most people don't know the answer to that, which is really no, it doesn't. We can collect so much data on these headsets right now, but the ability to actually get this into your existing LMS has caused some issues. Companies are catching up, of course, with it. The reality is right now, anything, the basics can be exported, stuff like completion, time in session. But what I'm seeing, and there's a few of them out there, is, and it's really so it's a it's not an LMS. It's more of an extended learning platform. And I've seen a couple of them that could go as far as tracking headsets, loading content in bulk on headsets from this device, or this piece of software. So you can, once you have the software loaded up to begin with, you can push it out there. But I just haven't seen anybody yet, as far as the major players of learning management systems, step up and integrated with everything that's going on. But some of the players that are in our industry, either on the not necessarily the content development side, some of them, but that they're putting some software together now to help bridge that gap. Where I see it going is, I think some of the larger guys of the world are working on it, and they're gonna try to figure this out. The question I always get, so you got these large L&D departments for the largest companies here, and that's kind of where they stall. They understand the benefit of what it can bring, and they can get from point A to B as far as developing content, but they stall a little bit when it comes to, well, do we want to invest in equipment that's changing, even though the price is going down, and how are we going to track all this information? Because we have to have some KPIs to be able to prove some ROI on here, and the starting point. So my opinion, to kind of wrap up this question here, is where it's going is, just as the demand keeps increasing and the prices are going down, that the players are playing with each other, they're integrating with each other. I don't think we're there yet, but everyone understands the importance of getting it done. So we're going to see it happen through integrations and some of this middleware that's already out there.
Super. And a lot of the training at the start of the year was actually companies that were doing in-person training where you brought 30 employees into a room, you had an instructor training them, and VR was used in that setting where maybe one person puts on a headset and the others watch what they're doing. But it was the context of traditional classroom-based learning. With headsets like the Quest now at $300, basically, do you foresee companies biting the bullet and shipping out a $300 headset to an employee who's remote to do training and so forth? Is this what John's vision is of people being introduced to VR through the office? Do you think that's a path forward?
I think that was actually happening a little bit before the pandemic hit, where 3 years ago and 2 years ago, to your scenario of a couple headsets, people sharing them. But even before the pandemic hit, I was involved in a project. Again, it was soft skills, leadership, and like a lot of applications, they were enhancements to an in-person environment, an ILT. So a 3-day leadership breakout session where you've more traditional, where you got people coming in, a combination of some pre-work, maybe some e-learning or videos. But then after having some serious conversation about technique, um, the breakout session, and even at that point, we were put 30, 40, 50 headsets out for these groups, and even larger groups of people where we really wanted them to use it on a regular. They wanted to use it on a regular basis. What I see, I think the big shift, and what I'm already hearing, and my view of this is this right here. It's the meeting collaboration part of it, where before, as I noted, it was more of a breakout session of an in-person event to now try the headset and role play or whatever it may be. But I think the actual meeting space and the meeting room of getting people here, whether it's a hybrid class for a high school or a college or workforce development, is every bit as important right now as the content, which was really more top of mind with those groups prior to COVID. Um, and now I think equally the content that's being developed, as well as the medium, not just VR, but the meeting space that we're in, and the ability to have a continuous collaborative event together.
Super. Shital, your background, your first VR game was on a mobile headset. Nepal is not a very wealthy country. South Asia, India, and so forth. There's a lot of restrictions on what people have access to. With Google, discontinuing the Google Daydream and Samsung pulling back from the Samsung Gear, even Oculus pulling back from the Oculus Go. Do you think the Quest has an opportunity in South Asia to come in as a $300 headset with a premium for getting it to those countries? Do you see there's enough of a demand or middle class to build VR in those markets? We had a visitor earlier in the 24 hours from Fiji, and he was trying to help students and low income people in Fiji who didn't have access to a lot of tools. Do we need to maintain these focus on mobile devices and universal devices, or do you think the Quest will penetrate? Excellent. And John, do you know, for the Pico headset in China, is the price point significantly lower than than what we see for the Quest here, or the Oculus Go, or is it priced to the market, or is it a kind of middle class experience?
Yeah, it is. In fact, they've got multiple models, but they've got entry level models there for as little as the equivalent of about 199 US dollars. And then they've got some higher end models. Now none of them are tethered. They are completely mobile, wireless, um, and they've got, to my knowledge anyway. But they also have some models that are higher spec than that are between 400 and 500 US dollars, the equivalent thereof.
So we had a few more people join here. Do we have any audience questions at the moment, or I can tee up some videos as well that show some of what we've been active with.
Ken?
Yeah.
What's your perspective for the mobile VR and the PC VR?
As you know from our past conversations, I've always been a fan of mobile VR. I think it's possible now with the capabilities of spatial computing with mobile devices that you can do things like we've done with portals where you can get six DOF experiences on a mobile device. I don't think it has to be limited to what Gear and Daydream were. And so I'm hoping we get to a point where people can start experiencing VR how it should be on a mobile device. But right now we seem to be in a little bit of a chasm whereby you have the Quest taking up that space, and hopefully we'll get back to a more universal device. I think what we're seeing with remote learning, remote education, remote businesses, people need multi-platform solutions. And so just as you can do Zoom from your mobile, from your PC, wherever you are, you'll be able to do AltSpace ultimately from a mobile device wherever you are. What we did with IVN, of course, used a web VR environment on a mobile device, and that was accessible. So I think you'll get these hybrid experiences where it's a full 3D world, but it's not as immersive as with a headset. And maybe we don't go back to strapping the brick to your face, but maybe we do have an immersive VR experience using your finger and your pinch and zoom and so forth.
And I think a lot of times that's enough in an environment, especially let's say you're in the field, you've got a phone, and it may just take that quick little meeting that we literally can have a group meeting with people in different parts of the world looking at an AR digital twin. Or just a 3D model, actually, that you can pinch and still see annotations and open up. Functional.
Yep. Well, functionality is the key. And, we've seen a lot of groups coming to the fore with solutions for education in this dire time where we don't have students in the schools. So hopefully we'll continue to see both, educational, business, and entertainment solutions that are accessible to everyone.
Do you think that there will be some kind of accessible VR for phones as well?
For phones?
Yeah, phones. Now we do have standalone headsets like Quest VR, but they discontinued the Google Daydream where you
Yeah.
could keep your phone in the headset, right? And the Samsung Gear. Do you think that there will be some kind of devices like those?
I think there will be. I don't know if it will be, through an Apple Glasses device or something that comes along that people haven't experienced yet, or some other method. But I think there will be. I think the technology is getting good enough that you can certainly do a 6 DOF experience on a mobile device. And so if you have people that are willing to make that bet, maybe it's Paracosma, maybe we have the ability to replace what Daydream and Gear VR were doing, but we have to wait and see. There is some reason that they pulled back. Whether you say they failed or whether it just wasn't a big enough success, that's the question. Similarly, Google Expeditions has pulled back a little from the classrooms in favor of Google Culture and Art as a blended application that's both tablet and screen based as well as AR and VR. And so I really hope we don't lose that ability to do educational school trips, to do expeditions like they had with Google Expeditions, because that's one of the most amazing and equalizing opportunities for VR is to give everyone in the world the experience of every other place in the world. When I was a kid, the rich kids could take a vacation to Europe. The poor kids maybe didn't even visit a farm, didn't know where milk came from, at their supermarket. And, that gap is what we're able to fill with VR. You can have incredibly amazing, field trips and experiences for anyone with a headset. And if that doesn't take place as it should, then, that's a real disappointment. But I think it's more of a question of time and how it takes place, not a question of where we are today.
Yeah, the ability can to bring somebody, no matter what age you're in. You're telling that story. Two came to mind. One, I wasn't involved in it, but I heard in after a New England Patriots Super Bowl victory, one of the many that they had, they someone had a 360 camera on one of the parades, so the Super Bowl championship parade, and then later on, and they set that up at a chair height alongside the parade, and then that gave the opportunity in elderly people and in um, elderly care facilities to have breakout sessions. Similar, you're talking about the brain games of ARP. This is more of just a getaway to be able to have somebody as if they were sitting at this parade and enjoying the parade and the sounds and the sights, and taking that experience to something more tangible, or as tangible in a facility, a manufacturing facility. So many people don't even get a chance to ever travel to these facilities. They might work for the companies, but suddenly, I could be transported. I could hear, I could see the sounds of a large, noisy factory, have tow motors running by me, and those turn and have human holograms talking of the supervisor of what's going on here today. You truly get this feeling of fear, actually, if you're standing in the wrong place as one of these machines go by you, besides the experience and the true emotion that goes along with it, you're going from there from something as simple as a new employee being able to say, you know what, now I have a little more experience before I go in there, or I don't even want to go in there. I'm not enjoying that environment. So the directions that this can go, of something as basic as, I call it basic now, a 360 video within a virtual reality headset, but it's going to go a long way. And I do think it's just going to be a staple at some point.
Yeah, I think 360 photos and videos are really interesting, especially compared to other digital cameras and phone cameras and so forth. The fundamental issue is, they're absolutely brilliant for certain things. If you're in a taxi in Kathmandu, you will never capture that experience on a video or a photograph. But if you hold a 360 camera out your taxi window and you hold it up above the taxi and you take some pictures or you film going down a crowded, busy street in Kathmandu, and you see the fabric store and the butcher shop and the furniture shop, and you see the people and you see the activity, you cannot capture that experience any other way than 360. photos and videos. If you're standing on top of Mount Everest, you can't take 3 panoramas. You want to see the entire world from the top of Everest. And there's certain applications, home, birthday parties. You want to capture everyone in that room and see them and enjoy them. And it's just really a great thing that you can experience. But it's all terribly, terribly difficult to use and share right now. If I take a 360 photo, I can't email it to you. I can't share it to you. A video, no way. It's much too big. If you can even get it out of the camera, a lot of them are stuck to the camera's platform. You have to upload it to Ricoh rather than to where you want to upload it. Facebook and YouTube are pretty good about hosting 360 content. But those also use 2 different platforms for Facebook and YouTube in terms of the formats and so forth. So we really haven't reached the point where you have a mobile phone and you can take a picture and it instantly shares with everyone. It's not that easy with 360 photos and videos, and it needs to be for us to get the massive adoption. And I think once we do, when people realize, wow, that's one of the true benefits of putting on a headset. As resolutions improve with the headsets, as you can turn around and see the world as if you were there, it really in a clear and vibrant way. That's a phenomenal benefit from VR that people don't fully appreciate until they have that opportunity. DJ, you have a question or are you stretching? Okay.
Ken, this is John here. I actually need to duck out in a couple of minutes. So if there's any final questions for me, I can field those. Otherwise, Ken, I know, has shared his contact info, and you can always offline to him to get to me as well if you have specific questions.
Here we have one.
Yeah, go ahead. I've seen
Gert's on our CTO's had a lot of experience with that. He does 360 streaming as a living, and it's a real problem because of the depth perception. And so for things that are close in like basketball or boxing or something, sometimes you can get a really good 360 experience. If it's football or soccer or something that's distant, or even baseball, unless that camera is in the center of the action, it's not really capturing the experience the way it should be with existing 360 technologies. There's other technologies like 4Replay and Intel's, view technology and so forth, where is we have our own technology we call Inverse 360 that we think will help with that. But right now, it's your eyes are really adaptive, and you look at something, you can effectively zoom in and telephoto and concentrate on what you're seeing, and you can see the play out on the field. It's really still hard to do that in a 360 experience, unfortunately. Is my
I heard someone talking that it was faint.
Might have been an awful experience.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, before you came to experience, unfortunately, is you might adjust your microphone as well. If you click at the top of your
Okay, so can you hear me?
Say it again.
Yeah, she talked your question if you like, or come forward.
Oh, here you come.
Okay, so can you hear me? Okay, good.
Microphone.
So it's Ming from Vancouver, but I'm doing the business with Chinese market. So with this platform, Chinese can access to it from China?
We're talking generally about AR and VR. We aren't specifically talking about a platform. We've talked about the Pico headsets and the HTC Focus, which are very active in China. There are issues with YouTube streaming in China. So we had a couple people join this event from China, but I think there were some problems with live video and things like that. But is there a particular type of platform you're interested in or asking about?
We try to use Roberta, and I think this platform also very interested. Um, have been using a Roberta before?
Roberta, are you saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Roberta.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm not. Don't have a lot of experience with that, but um,
Okay.
you have different paid platforms and free platforms, and a lot of the free platforms in the West aren't necessarily available in China. I think there's some domestic Chinese platforms. There's a huge amount of domestic Chinese, VR games and experiences. The question I've had when I've seen a lot of them is the quality. We had a VR installation, a location-based VR in Kathmandu that was based on some Chinese technology and kind of Easter eggs that you sat in and watched VR, and it was a poor experience. It gave a disappointing impression of VR at that time, but at the same time, you have huge, VR theme parks that have been built in China. You have a huge market in China for VR. So I think what you'll find is a lot of the things HTC is doing will be important there. HTC just released their XR suite for enterprise that includes virtual meeting tools, virtual event tools, different collaboration tools for VR. That was released first and available first in China, not in the West. And so, you do have platforms like HTCs and others that should be a really great opportunity in mainland China.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah, certainly. Well, thanks, Sean. We really appreciate you joining us, and look forward to you participating in other great events.
If you've had a chance to put
I'm
on a
going to
virtual
play a
reality
couple of
headset,
short
you know
videos
how
here.
immersive it can be. Whether you're fighting dragons or flying through space in an intergalactic war, the options
See you later,
are
John.
limitless. But what if you just want to step into a realistic
Yes,
space,
thank you. See
explore
you.
your creativity, and have fun? Unnamed VR's virtual reality sandbox does just that. Step into a large, realistic mansion with 15 game rooms, all filled with adventure and fun. Maybe you want to check out a room with zip lines, climbing walls, and giant trampolines. Or what if you want to play music on a guitar, or paint in 3D, or spray paint in the graffiti room? You can even just play ping pong or shoot a bow and arrow in the archery room. Aside from their game rooms, the entire mansion is realistic. The cabinets open, the vases break, and you can pick up and throw any object. It's truly a space for you to explore your creativity and immerse yourself in the virtual reality world. Unnamed VR is available for consumers and also for VR arcades. To get started,
So that's a short clip on our consumer game. It's now called Shelter in Place and available for free because of COVID. This is one of the biggest street festivals in Kathmandu, and really exciting experience in person. And we've offered and produced 360 videos of the festival there. It's really a great time. So this is just a teaser of the 360 experience. Very, very hard to capture in with a traditional camera. So you can check that out also on our YouTube channel, Paracosma Inc. This is the Hindu temple in Kathmandu as well. These last two videos have a couple theme. This was a older version, so it's not quite as good resolution as a more recent version, but it really gives you a sense of what you can experience through photogrammetry, through recreations in virtual worlds. We do a lot of work with digital twins for enterprise and other places, and this was one of the ways we learned how to do what we do. This is a very early teaser we did for machine maintenance.
The two dots below the QR code to see the model contour lines in above the machine, and there is task button above which shows the list of tasks that can be performed with this machine. This is emergency task. We can see the arrow pointing towards the emergency button.
So what's exciting about this is you're really blending the real world and the virtual world to provide useful information and data and training. The manufacturing company we did the pilot and now we're on second phase with. Right now they're a 110-year-old company and they still use paper clipboards. They give an engineer a clipboard in the morning and they go out and oil their machines. This is G-Easy, the wrapper. These are some AR characters we made for Zedgy, which is the world's largest ringtone and screensaver company. They offered some AR experiences and applications along the way. These were some of the Zedgy mascots that we made for them as well. So really fun when you have an art team that comes from an animation background and a creative art background. We can create really exciting things that you don't see every day. I forgot what I put in here. That might be it. So just a little example of some of the things we do. There's about 20 or 30 videos on our YouTube channel, but wanted to share a little bit about what we're doing. We're coming up now. We have exactly 17 minutes to go of this 24 hours in VR. We had 70 hours prior to this with VR Day, and now we're getting near the end. One thing I would absolutely recommend people do, and let me see if I can do this, but I might try and re-import our world where I've added some special features and so forth. And there's a couple portals if you're interested to get to some of the Paracosma worlds in AltSpace. And you might have to re-enter the world, re-enter the space, but then you'll be able to access that. But if anyone has any questions, we'll listen for those. And if you just give me 1 minute, I will see what I can do here. Okay, if you're experienced at AltSpace, if you go to your AltSpace menu and then go to settings, then right in the middle of the screen is re-enter the space. If you hit re-enter, you should see a choice, re-enter event or re-enter room. I think you can do either one.
Re-enter space, Ken?
You can reply. Even your voice is too low.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's
All right. So, thank you, Jim, very much for joining us. Thank you, Shital, for joining us. Thank you, guest user and Toshiko and Shin and Bob's camera and test user and Grant. I think, everyone here, we're at the witching hour. We're at the end of the event. It's been another great 24 hours. What I was saying when a lot of people couldn't hear, perhaps, is that one of the best things to do in Altspace is to go on tours with strangers to different worlds, because most of the exciting worlds aren't public or they're not listed, and you don't see them by yourself. You won't just run into them. But the creators who are making worlds, they're really phenomenal things. And the other day I went in about 5 or 6 different worlds and saw some things that just blew my mind. I didn't think they were possible in Altspace VR. If you go to one, the Sardonic Mirror, which is a hub station, it's a spectacular building, a spectacular setting. There's some others as well where you have entire creations that I didn't think Altspace could necessarily support that. So what you're seeing here in this room and in general is just scratching the surface of what Altspace can do. And so if you have some time, if you'd like to, once this event ends, you won't be able to return to this space. But if you go in one of the Paracosma worlds, you can click you are here, and then you can mark it as a favorite place, and then you'll be able to get back to it another time. The same if you're going on a tour with other people. Make sure you mark and save as a favorite those worlds you visit, because they're very hard to find and search for otherwise. But the skill and creativity and inventiveness of what people are doing is really exciting thing here in Altspace. And so take your time and explore when you can. If there's no more questions, then I'm happy to open a portal to some of these worlds, and we can explore together, or we can call it a long and successful day after 24 hours. No, that's it, I think. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and I really appreciate you joining. And we can, yeah, and we look forward to our next event. I'll come off the stage, and if I don't think you can get through the stage blockers to join a portal, but if we go up in the bar area, if anyone wants to visit some new worlds, we can show you some new worlds. Oh, the portals aren't here. Oh, they blocked my portals. There were. I put in 3 portals here, Shital, and they blocked the portals, but we have one of the pictures left. This was the Yarizi World portal. It was here. So I think because of the...
and 5. I can see 5.
Oh, you can see them. I don't see them. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll re-enter again. Re-enter.
Okay, he is doing the... You said those?
Oh, they're here now. They were not existing in my iteration of Altspace for a moment. But you can either just click on a portal and it will ask if you want to go there, or you can look at Shital. And whoever else is interested, I want to show you this one, the Sardonic Mirror. It's pretty spectacular. So what I will do is I will open a portal, and then you guys can click on this portal, and then when we're all ready, we can enter the world. Shital, you want to join?
Yes.
All right, Jim, rejoin. And just keep it. No, that you had it, and then it went away. Try clicking on the label or on the ball or wherever. I haven't figured out the magic spot. Yeah, come closer. Maybe come closer. There you go. Wait, there's someone else. All right, that's Shin. Come on, Jim. Jim. I think you can just walk into it too. Maybe can you? Let's try that. Or try clicking again. Go if you're a friend with me. You can go to Ken once we get there. You want to try again, Shin and Toshiko? Try again, Jim. You had it at one point. Okay, here. Toshiko, join.
Toshiko, yes. Toshiko.
Okay, confirm.